Hi, I'm Sean from Sewing and Vacuum Warehouse, and today we are going to continue our countdown to the Quilt Festival. And this today is just a really small tip. It's a bit of information that you may think you already know, but might need a little help with. And that is, how do we regulate and monitor our seam allowances? First of all, what is a seam allowance? Now, a seam allowance is going to be whatever that distance is between the edge of the fabric and where that needle is going through the fabric. And those seam allowances are going to change depending on what we're going to sew. Now, the seam allowance on an apparel sewing is always going to be slightly longer, either 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch. And the reason for that is, on a seam like that, you're more likely to want to tuck it under and maybe do like a flat fell stitch. So you need a little more fabric to work with. Now on quilting, it is almost always going to be a 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch, you're gonna see that all the time. And how do you know that what you're doing in your sewing is a 1/4 inch? Now you may use a presser foot like this one or maybe this one. Now that's only one of 3 things that you really need to take care of to make sure that that seam is a 1/4 inch. The other 2 are things you may not think about. What about your thread? Your thread is going to definitely have something to contribute to that seam allowance. If you're using, say, a King Tut, which is a little bit thicker thread than, say, a 50 weight Aurifil, that King Tut is going to eat into your seam allowance a little more than the Aurifil, which is much thinner. And then on top of that is, how do you press your seams? Are you someone that pulls out that seam and then hits it with the iron, or do you just fold it over and let that seam go naturally? That is also going to create a different seam allowance. So how do you know that you are getting a perfect 1/4 inch? Well, we're gonna do a little test, and that's gonna tell you what you need to know. So I want you to take 3 pieces of fabric, and they need to be the same. So go to something like a jelly roll. So you're gonna have 2.5 inch cut strips, right? So just take the same length all the way across, and you're gonna sew them together. Now, when you're sewing those 3 pieces together, if you have that perfect 1/4 inch, then the width of those 3 pieces together is going to be 6.5 inches. Now, how do I come up with that? You've got 3 2.5 inch strips. When you sew them together, you're losing 1/4 inch on your outer strips, and you're losing 1/2 inch on your inner strips. So it's an inch that you're losing. So 3 strips of 2.5 inches are going to, with perfect 1/4 inch seams, be measured at 6.5. And I guarantee, if you're not absolutely sure, it's going to surprise you. I know that when I did it, I think I came in much less. I was not getting the proper seam allowances. So sew the 3 pieces together, measure them. If they are not 6.5 inches, your 1/4 inch seams need to be adjusted. Where you're going to do that is probably not in your thread, and it's not going to be in the way you press, because that's kind of your habit. Where you're going to alter that is in your needle position on your machine. So you may need to set that 1/4 inch foot and then move your needle position over to the left or the right. All you have to do is sew these together, measure it. If it's not right, make an adjustment with your needle placement, and then try it again. It took me 3 times to get that 1/4 inch, and it doesn't matter what machine you're on. Those 3 things, that's 4, those 3 things are going to, give you that seam allowance every time. So I'm Sean from Sewing and Vacuum Warehouse in Houston, and we are still counting down to Quilt Festival, and I'll see you there.